start this. All right.
We can start.
Okay, it is Thursday, May 2nd, 5:30, and we are at a board meeting to select a new board member to replace Alan Grunig. And we'd like to welcome everyone who's here. And we'll go ahead and start with the roll call, and we will begin with Larry.
Larry Jepson, board member.
Randall Bagley, board member.
Roger Pulsifer, board member.
Kathy Christiansen, board member.
Jeff Nielsen, board member.
Terry Rhodes, board member.
Dale Hanson, business administrator, and Superintendent Steve Norton is also here, but not in his seat right now.
Okay. And then I forgot to ask you, Jeff, would you be willing to lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
And state our mission statement?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so there's just a couple of
Let
things.
him do the mission statement.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Oh, our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Thanks for catching me on that.
Sorry, Roger.
I usually cut everybody off. All righty, so we've got a couple of things to talk about just before. We have the two candidates. Clint will be first, and then Chris Cochran, Clint Moffett, and then Chris Cochran will be second. And I think it would be nice if we just introduce ourselves as each one comes in. We're going to give them the option to sit at the table or stand at the podium to ask. And I will start off by asking them to tell them about themselves. And then let's just rotate through the questions. So do you want to just start, Terry, with number one?
Do you want me to do 7? Since that's the,
Well, if you
Okay, I'll
want,
do
it
one.
doesn't really matter who
I'll
does.
do 1.
Okay, it might come back to you.
Okay,
All
so
right.
I'll do 1 and Jeff will do 2, you mean like that?
Yes.
So we'll just take
And
turns.
then I will
Okay.
do 3, and Roger, you do 4. And then Randall do 5, Larry do 6, and then Terry do 7.
Oh, okay.
There you
So
Ooh, I
it
get
worked out
2.
just perfectly. Okay. And then we were trying to figure out, look at your tallying sheet. It's got rank at the bottom of all the questions, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then overall impression, rank 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. I didn't even notice that when I was looking at it. Is there a particular reason why that should have more points than the others? What do you think? Should we keep it?
You mean the last one?
Yeah.
The overall impression one.
Mm-hmm. Right before you total up the points. It's just different.
Why would it be weighted more? I don't know.
That's what we can't figure out, and
Oh.
I didn't,
I don't see any reason to weight it more, but
should we
unless-
just,
Well, overall impression, though, usually has something to do with, because you've hired people, and people with the same skill set, you're usually looking for their ability to work with other people and their personality, so your overall impression. And that, in other people that hire in hiring positions usually holds more weight, right? Than just the
Can,
skill
yes.
set.
That's true.
so, do you think it's a good idea to leave it then?
I think we can leave it.
Leave it? Okay, so just be aware, there's more points on that. And then, here's the other question. Jeff, would you go out with me to tally them up at the end of both of
Sure.
them? Okay. When we come back, would you feel comfortable just anybody sharing an impression or feeling before we make the final decision? Or do you think we should just go strictly by the points?
Are we doing the final decision tonight?
Mhm.
Will they be here?
No.
I think, looking at the 2 applications, I'm guessing they'll be close
Yeah.
in points. And so, I don't know, what do you think? It bears discussion afterward, but I'm happy to go with points if that's what everybody else wants.
What do you?
The last 2 times we did go by points, and I thought it worked out well. Just went by points and then added them
And
up.
that was that? What do you think, Larry?
I think that's more straightforward, unless we come out with a tie. Then we've got
Then we
it.
could have a discussion if there's a tie.
Okay, so we just go by the straight number of points, winner takes all.
Okay.
Okay,
And I'm assuming high number, strong performance.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though it
I
seems
learned never to
backwards.
assume that.
Yeah, it doesn't say there, does it?
Yeah, okay. So anybody have any other questions before we go ahead and start?
Excuse me.
Okay, let me just ask a couple of things. And this is just pertaining to our meetings coming up. Do you have the board evaluation coming to us yet, or can you get that in action?
So he was going to send it out the first part of May, so
Oh.
you should see it any day now.
Okay, all right. And then Randall and Roger, if you will do your NSBA reports at next week.
Next week,
Yeah.
on the ninth.
On the ninth.
Okay.
Okay. And then, did June 14th work out okay when you checked your schedule for our retreat?
I had it on the 13th,
That's what I had was the 13th.
Oh,
which is a Thursday.
Oh,
Is
okay.
that, is it supposed to be the 14th?
Nope, it's supposed to be the Thursday. I just did it wrong. Thank you. And I wondered about everybody getting me your topics. I got your two topics.
Oh, I forgot to give you mine. didn't I?
All right, so, and there's a little paper there for
Okay,
you to
I will
fill
do
out.
that.
You can just text them or email them to me if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Would any of you also, I didn't put this on the little sheet of paper, but would any of you be interested in maybe adding school land trust training to that night for us?
On the night of the 13th?
I'm fine if you want to do that, yeah.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yeah.
All right, we'll see how everything comes out.
Okay.
Okay, if we have time. And then, just kind of for a heads up, we will get the schedule for next year, but July, we're gonna have to change our meetings to the 11th and then the 25th, because the first Thursday is the 4th of July.
Oh.
So just kind of keep that in mind. And then in August, we'll change it to the 8th and the 22nd, because August the 1st is the Preston Rodeo. So, that has already been claimed.
Don't we, oh. I thought, when do we have to have the truth and taxation hearing in August?
It's okay.
It's-
It has to be by the end of August.
So just before the last day of August? I just remember Dale was talking about that to me.
And
Yeah.
when did she say?
Jeff,
In
do
the
your kids
last
have
meeting.
sheep at the fair?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be there on the,
She says
Oh, on
we're
the
meeting
8th.
On the
on
8th.
first, but the 8th, and then 2 weeks.
And
later.
the truth and
Okay.
taxation hearing has to be by itself now.
Yes.
Because of this year's legislation.
And so
right?
we were talking about it when we were doing the agenda this week, and we thought possibly the 22nd, we would do it, because last year, do you remember, we only had one board meeting in August, because there was just nothing
Right.
to do.
Okay,
So,
That works.
okay, everybody good with those? Okay. All right.
will the truth and there's a time it can't start before, is it 6?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm, it
So will
has-
it start at 6?
It'll start at 6.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's everything I have, and does anybody have anything else? Thank you for being here, and let's just try to do our very best to make a really good decision on another person who will work as well with us as Alan did, because we've had such a good thing going for the last couple of years, so it'd be nice if we can continue. All right, Tim, would you just go out and see if Clint is here? Clint. Guess it doesn't really matter, but. Oh, yeah, I think it would probably be a good idea.
They said they're enjoying visiting.
They're gonna wait until their time. Perfect. Hi there.
Hello. I don't know whether I want to go that way or this way.
Terry
Jeff
Gray.
Nielsen, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jeff.
Kathy Christiansen.
Roger Pulsner. Roger.
I am Randall Bagley. Larry Jones.
You related to Ken Well Bagley at all?
Very, very distantly. Yeah.
You have your choice. You can sit right there. This kind of looks like the Spanish Inquisition, but we really don't want it to be that way.
They said you were really mean.
Uh-huh.
You were all loaded up. This won't be too bad, I don't think.
Okay.
I've been to the faculty senate before.
Oh, okay.
University study,
Uh-huh, so,
talking about athletics and academics. They can't be that hard.
You mean athletics versus academics?
Yes. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And why does the money always go to athletics instead of academics?
And is this your wife with you?
It is. This is my better half.
nice to have you here.
Jane Moffett, but she's the more academic person of the two. I'm an administrator. She was a ESL teacher.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Both in the Cache School District and Old, and at Utah State and Fresno State.
Nice. Well, we're really glad to have both of you be here. So we'll go ahead and start.
Speak on this thing?
Yes, because it has to be recorded. We have 7 questions for you, but before we begin,
Is this on? It is, okay.
we would just like to start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll take turns asking you a question, and if you see our heads down, we're just taking notes.
Okay.
All right, so, do you have any questions for us before you begin?
No, I think I'll probably ask them at the end, maybe,
Okay.
if you
All right.
would like.
That'd be
And
great.
we're-
Okay,
How
yeah.
long did you want to take in this?
On this, well, we have 20 minutes for the whole thing, so maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
3 or 4 minutes?
Just tell me
Okay.
about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Roy, Utah. It was a Roy High Royal. Came to Utah State for my education. Graduated from Utah State and went to work for Utah State for a short time. But I passed most of the CPA exam. And of course, to get your CPA license, you need to go out and work for a CPA firm. So I left Utah State University after about 6 months and went to work for a small accounting firm out in Vernal, Utah. They had a Vernal office and a Roosevelt office, and I got the opportunity to move to the Roosevelt office after a while. So I worked in both the offices in the CPA firm. I worked there for 7 years in that area. And then because the Uinta Basin is known for the oil and gas industry, one of our clients said, "How would you like to work for us?" So I worked for a company that was owned by a Canadian company, and after a year working there, we moved to Calgary, Alberta in the mid-'80s. Went to work there as the controller and then the treasurer of an oil and gas servicing, the largest oil and gas servicing company in Canada. We were just a small operation in the United States, but we were very big in Canada. But it was in the downturn in the oil industry. It always goes on a roller coaster. If you ever knew highs and lows, the oil industry, especially as a contractor, is where you felt that. Well, the Canadian government said when we went to renew our visa the second year, we would really like you to go back to the United States. Well, because of the downturn, we had shut down our U.S. operations. So I had to find a new job. I had to leave the country by the end. Went in January, we had to be out of the country by the end of June. I found out what immigration was and immigration law. But we left, and I actually called Utah State University because I had worked there at one time and said, "Do you happen to have a job available in the controller's office?" And they did, and I applied for that, and we moved back to Logan, back to work at Utah State, which I worked in a number of positions for 20 years there. And then about 12 years ago, I had the opportunity to take a position out at assistant vice president or associate vice president at Fresno State in Fresno, California. So I went to Fresno and worked there for 10 years and then retired from Fresno in September of 2016. We were called to go on an LDS mission to Anchorage, Alaska. We went there for 18 months. And we returned to Hyde Park at the end of our mission about a year ago now. So we've been back here in Hyde Park since our mission is over in the same house we lived in previously. My wife worked a miracle. She got our home back that we had built in Hyde Park after 12 years. My 5 children all graduated from Skyview. They're all a product of this school district. They've all gone on to higher education and have all been successful there. I think that's about enough about me.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to give you a little bit of information. So, as an introduction to the Cache County Board of Education position, we felt it was important to make you aware of some meeting expectations to make sure this will work with your life schedule. The Cache County Board of Education meets the first Thursday of the month in a study session, and then the third Thursday of the month in a board meeting. Sometimes they change when there's conflicts and holidays that interfere. Additional meetings may be held when necessary, and you will be asked to represent the Cache County Board of Education on a few district committees, where you just kind of go sit in and report back to us what's going on. Attendance at the yearly National School Boards Association Conference and the Utah School Boards Association Conference is optional, but we've gone to both of those as a board for many years. And there just might be other things that come up, like visiting schools, school community councils, and things like that, that would be great too.
Well, there's many. I've had opportunities to go to additional meetings. If I just had an 8-to-5 job, that would have been great, but I was a member of a cabinet at Fresno State, and so we had many evening events that we attended. So
Okay, great. All right, we'll go ahead and start then, and we're going to begin with Terry and the first question.
So you've already described to us your education and work experience. What specific skills do you have that you feel would help on the Cache County School Board?
Well, I have an extensive background in public finance. Many of the bond issues by Utah State University for housing were done while I was there. Also, the stadium projects were financed by bonds. I know that part very well. I've been involved with the financial statement preparations of public entities, Utah State University and Cal State University Fresno. They're both public funded institutions, and knowing all of those things, all of the audit requirements that go with an entity. I've been involved with that. Sadly, I've been involved in the first few years at Fresno State on how to reduce budgets. We became very effective in doing that because the state of California revenues dropped significantly. I thought it was my arrival in California did it, but it was across the nation. I'm sure it was with this school district, because you had to deal with budget reductions in that time. 12 to 15% reduction of state appropriation in 2 successive years was a very difficult thing, but we did that. Also at the same time as we had enrollment increases, so it was a very tough situation because we were accepting, it was to your benefit to accept more students because you could at least get the tuition revenue. But you had to find teachers, qualified teachers, and you had to find course sections to be able to teach them. So it was a two-head. Yes, the revenue was nice, but it was also a challenge too. So I've done a lot of that. I've done everything in the financial world, and I've been more involved in higher education athletic financing, which I don't want us to ever be on that part as a board, that you have those tugs that become part of that, but I've had to deal with that very big and difficult budget issues at times.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
Okay. Please describe your understanding of the role and responsibility of a public school board and a school board member. And also, have you had any experience serving in a position similar to this one?
What was the last part?
Have you had any experience serving in a position similar to this one?
Okay, I'll answer. I believe the board is a watchdog. It's a promoter and helping you achieve the mission statement that you have here of helping that move forward. I think that's part of the role. But I think you have a watchdog type of role also. because the buck will stop with the board. You know, it's not easy at times, and that's the role that you play. And, you know, you have to watch, having reviewed the financial statements of this school district, you're in good shape, but it can go the other way. And if you don't, I always use and when we were going through budget problems, you could make a ship, when the budget's not good, it kind of leans on its side, and it's not going very well. And you can make some adjustments to try and get the budget up, or you can make the correct decision to get a new way for that ship to go. And I think that's part of the role of a board. Make sure that that there is a ship that can sail down the financial and academic road successfully. That you can be able to have that happen. Make the hard decisions. You have to make hard decisions at times. And that's the role of the board. Now, I have served as the board chair of the Fresno State Athletic Corporation. We had a full functioning board who ran athletics for Fresno State. We are one of the very few in the country that has a corporation that runs athletics, and I was the board chair. So I had to do that. I had all board agendas, I had all board meetings, audit committees, finance committees, everything associated with running that, and also being in compliance with NCAA regulations. So that's been my role on being on a board.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, how do you view the school board members' relationship with the district and the school staffs?
Well, I think it ought to be a working relationship, but I don't think it has to be a part where, I think you can work with people, but you will have to say no, and you will have to say yes. There's both sides of that. There's things that can go forward and be very positive, but there are times you have to say no. And we can't do that, or we can do this, you know. But I think if you're on to the mission statement and working to provide the best opportunity for the children in this school district to be successful, and that's the goal, I think it lines up. But there may be some times where it's off. But it's a walk, you have to make adjustments. You have to be flexible. I mean, in my role, they always came and said, do you have more money to do this? You know, we really need to do this. You know, and you try to find money to do it, and then sometimes you just have to say no. We don't have money to do that. We just can't do it. You know, I think one of the things that's come up in Utah, student fees for your students to participate in extracurricular activities. That's a tough issue because you don't want to charge too much, but yet you want to have a broad-based educational opportunity. So you have tough issues that you deal with at times on that. And some parents can't afford it. You know, it's the middle income person that gets hit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would you describe your vision for the Cache County School District?
Well, I think you've made some headways in dealing with growth. I mean, 2 wonderful new high schools that are here, and your academic achievements are higher than they've been. I remember our children were always taught, you know, it would be nice if their English scores would be a little higher when they came out of Skyview High, and now I think they are. So I think you made waves, but I think you're still going to have to deal with growth. I mean, believe it or not, people are probably going to drive to live in Cache Valley because they can buy a house a little cheaper than they can in Salt Lake County or Utah County right now, and you're going to get growth because that's where housing's going to be affordable. I hate to be the parent that has to drive all the way to Salt Lake to work, but maybe they'll become telecommuters, who knows? But you're going to have to do that. I think you're going to have to this board will have to find a way to probably get another middle school, maybe back at Cedar Ridge, and build an elementary school. I think those are things that will have to be done to meet the demand. But it's always, you know, you're watching growth, you're watching what the statistics project and where your needs are. But I think that's going to be critical to be able to address those needs. But it's great you've been able to build the high schools that you have.
Okay.
That's,
Thank you very much.
What has been your experience with the Cache County School District, and what do you see as strengths and weaknesses of the district?
well, I know we had occasions with our children as we interacted with the schools. I mean, both with the counselors and advisors at the school. We had one son that had special needs that needed some accommodations. We found that when we were able to explain his needs in a way that they could understand them, that the district was very accommodating. I mean, I think there's always a parent, you always feel there could be more accommodation, but I think they made the correct accommodations after we continued to persist in doing that. But I think that's the key thing is how do you, I mean, the board has to meet a range of people that have needs from this side to this side. Some may be, they think they have the best quarterback that's going to star in the NFL, and they want you to have the best athletic programs. Some have children that have great musical skills that you have to provide a balance. It's a balance across the thing. And I've seen the district being very balanced. You know, we have great programs in all of the schools. And we try to reach out and help. You look down your list of people that are in different academic endeavors, you see every type of thing from, you know, bilingual schools, you know, bilingual instruction, and where you have, I didn't know till I read minutes of your meetings, you had bilingual instructors in your schools from foreign countries. I mean, what a great opportunity to have someone that speaks the language. My spouse and I, we were assigned to work with Hmong people in Anchorage, Alaska. Luckily, she had had the opportunity to teach those Hmong students in Fresno, California in the school, but not I, other than my secretary was a Hmong, was from the Hmong people, and she was very good at Fresno State. But you have to reach out. You don't know when you're going to encounter them. We were with them. Do we speak Hmong? No, we don't. But you can love people. Your heart can go out and reach them. And they know you love them, and they can be successful. It's all about love. I think it's about, sometimes people fall down and hurt their knees. You give them a hug, you get them back up, and they start to walk again. So it's all that way. That's how I see education. We might have a problem, but we need to find a solution and walk with them.
The Cache County School District operates with a total annual budget of over $150 million. What experience or ideas do you have in working with this type of budget?
Well, Fresno State's budget was $250 million. I believe Utah State's, with their research when I left here 12 years ago, was approaching $500 million when I left. The athletic budget at Fresno State, which the Athletic Corporation, was $40 million. So I have a range, 40 million is a lot of money, but 40 million to almost $500 million. So I've worked with those things. I've worked with that over and over again. You know, I've worked with bond issues, trying to sell a revenue stream to people that are willing to bond and invest with you. It's not just the revenue stream. They want to be paid back. They want to know what the revenue stream is, but they want to know what Cache County School District is about. They want to know that you're committed to your mission and that the community is committed to support you in your mission. So you see those things. That's all the important part of what's going on. It's not just a financial transaction, but it is all in on what the mission, and they believe in what your mission is. I mean, your mission is very well stated in your last refinancing, what you're trying to achieve here. That's what sells to, I mean, the bond issue, it's not individuals that buy your bonds. it's insurance companies, it's those type of people that are buying. They want to believe what you believe, and they want to do that. So that's the important part, because you need to be able to get out and do more. I mean, if you had enough cash to pay as you go, I would be the first one to say, build these new high schools with the money we have on hand. But that won't happen. I mean, you have to be able to sell what your product is to them, and they engage with you. They become your partners in making it happen.
Thank you.
We have one last question.
Okay?
So the local school board represents the public voice in public education. So as board members, we provide citizen governance for what public schools need and what the community wants, and try to balance those, just like you've been talking about. So sometimes regularly we need to work with state legislators, and sometimes we have to be able to explain very clearly what our needs and wants are in public education in K-12, which sometimes we have the higher ed versus K-12 discussions.
Yeah.
And you're probably very well aware of those. What experience do you have working with state legislators, and what ideas do you have about how to make that a very, if possible, win-win situation?
The first thing that I would say is you need a relationship with the state legislators before you have the issue. I mean, that's important, to know who they are, know that you can call them, or you can send them an email and talk about something. This year, in particular, I went with my son. My son invited me to go down to Salt Lake City. He's majoring in a master's degree in information technology. So he said, "Dad, why don't you come to the Silicon Slopes meeting with me?" I said, "Why would I do that?" But I went, and I saw all these technology people from Utah. And 5 of them said, with the governor there in the room that day, we'll each give $1 million apiece, $5 million if the legislature will meet that need. If they'll match it. We want more computer science people coming out of the high schools. So they challenged the governor. So I knew Val Palmer. I had worked with him. I started to write an email to Val Palmer about, I've just heard about this. I'm sitting here at this conference. And the legislature had just started that day. They were in Salt Lake. I wrote Val about it and said, I think you need to support this. Well, Val wrote me back and said, I don't even know what you're talking about, Clint. So I went into depth on what it was, and he got back to me later on and said, I can see more, I hear more about it now. I think I can support it. But I think you have to have that relationship. You need to know who they are, that you can pick the phone up, send an email, or see them on the street and talk to them about an issue. I mean, you're always going to be passionate about what Cache County School District issues are. And they're going to find that. They know, when I was in higher ed, we knew what our issues were, and we knew that was what we were going to sell to legislators. But they know that. But you need to be able to talk and have a good conversation with them, and maybe it'll move your issues forward.
Thank you. That's all of the questions. Now, do you have any questions for us?
What do you think you're seeking in a new board member?
Anybody want to respond?
I
I
think
look at
number
one as
one,
being someone that's open-minded, listens to all concerned people, and one who is really striving to do what's best for the kids. Because that's our main thing.
That's your main, okay. And what do you see as your issues for the board?
Anybody want to respond?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with growth. We definitely have some challenges with growth. And with that growth and, finite resources, it's going to be managing how we best implement the actions to handle that growth. And then additionally is keeping a qualified staff. There's competing entities for the teachers and administrators and everybody that we've got to make sure that we keep our individuals that are providing the education at the right level. So
That's a very difficult issue when you get one of the Sully school districts offering $9,000 more for entry level. That's really tough.
Yep.
And that's, I found that when Sarbanes-Oxley was passed in the federal level for auditing, our accountants at Utah State could walk down to an accounting firm in Logan and earn $6,000-7,000 more just by going down there to work. And it's a very difficult time, and I mean, it'll be the same type of thing that happens with this. I mean, when they get into education, they were saying, I need to pay a mortgage payment. I want to get a home. And that's $6,000 or $7,000 means the difference between having a home for my family or not. And I think that's, the challenge that will happen here. The good ones will go, and I mean, I love Cache Valley. That's why we retired to live here, because we love it, but it only does so much at times, and we have to be considerate of what we're going to have to do to retain people here.
One of the other things that I think is an issue for us, which is just starting to crop up over the last few years, is the social emotional development of the kids in our schools. That has totally changed in the last few years, and it's a big concern for us. And how are we going to help every single child in this district make it through their school career to become successful and mentally adjusted?
We encountered that as we served our mission in Alaska, seeing the emotional needs of missionaries to be able to be successful. And I think that's just what you're seeing here. They have so many other emotional, social needs to solve as much as being successful in the classroom. It'll be a big part of what happens in the future.
Larry, did you have something you wanted to add to?
I think one more thing, as we continue to grow, we're going to become more diverse, which is going to require us to address new issues that we have never dealt with before.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably one of the biggest benefits that I had of going out to Fresno, was to seeing the diversity within Fresno State, the diversity and the need for education, not just higher education, but the need for education, K through 12, for those students to be successful in K through 12, that they could come to college as first-time attenders of college and be successful in college. I mean, Fresno is really the Appalachian of the West. If you look at the poverty and the achievement of students, it is a very difficult area in the country. And so we saw it. We saw people, and it was so gratifying to see a first-time college attender, which I was. I mean, I was the first person in my family to go to college. And it makes a difference. Education makes a difference, whether it's K or 12 or higher education or vocational education. It makes a difference. It's getting the people there, and you say it very well, because they've got an emotional baggage that is very big now coming through our systems.
Okay, well, thank you. Do you have anything else?
No.
All right.
Would you make a decision tonight or at?
Yes, we will make a decision tonight, and either I guess it will be me who will give you a call and let you know.
Okay.
So if not tonight, then tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Anything else you'd like to know?
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
running, I guess is what
Yeah.
you call. Thank you.
This is a short meeting.
It is a short meeting.
Yeah.
No kidding, yeah.
But you get out early. I mean, I've been on board and just go on.
Oh, yeah.
we've had those. But,
If I come on the board, I hope I don't make that
We had a long one last week.
Have a good night. She does to me too. I wonder if we've seen her teaching. Do you think?
Do you know what that was about? She looks so.
Oh, the earlier.
But where would I have seen her? I mean, she wasn't at Lewiston. Maybe so. No. Surely I'm a lot older than
When,
she is.
when what? Oh. We'll give them a few minutes. They probably are just chatting. Yeah, his is 6:05, so let's do it. Let's go grab him. Any comments, anyone, up to this point? Okay.
So we doing questions in the same order on this one too? Good, okay.
Do we need to change anything?
No, it worked well.
Okay. How's your wife doing, Gary? Hi there. You have your choice. You can sit there or you can stand there, but it kind of looks like the Spanish Inquisition with us here, but we are not threatening people at all.
So no Bibles or?
No? No. We're gonna start off first with introducing ourselves to you, so we'll start over here.
Terry Rhodes, I'll try not to call you Dr. C.
Jeff Nielsen.
Kathy Christiansen.
Roger Pulsifer.
Randall Bagley.
Larry Jepson.
All right, so we have 7 questions that we're going to ask you,
Okay.
and.
Should I speak into the microphone, by the way?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, because it's being recorded.
Sure.
All righty, and
Thanks.
we will rotate through the questions, so each of us will ask you one question. And we are writing and taking notes, so if we're not looking at you the whole time, don't feel like we've lost interest. We're just.
I would actually prefer that.
Would you?
He's used to that.
All right. So, just kind of as a little introduction to our board, we wanted to make you aware that there are 2 meetings each month, the first Thursday and the third Thursday. We have a study session on the first Thursday and then a board meeting on third Thursday. Sometimes those are moved around a little bit due to holidays or something that comes up, but that's pretty traditional. And then, as a member of this board, you would also be on a couple of other district committees. And the responsibility for that is just to attend and bring a report back to us from the meeting or any information that we need to have for that. We have a yearly Utah School Boards Association convention in Salt Lake and a yearly National School Boards Association convention somewhere, and next year it's going to be in Chicago. So you're not required to go to that, but we generally as a board have done that and got some good helpful information, and it's also great for bonding and helping us to get acquainted with each other a little more on a personal level. So before we start the questions, we'd just like you to take 3 or 4 minutes and tell us about yourself.
Sure. I've lived in Cache Valley, I think a total of between 20 and 25 years now. I'm actually not originally from Cache Valley. I was born in Detroit and lived in Southern California and then in Denver. I met my wife, who's a Logan native. She went to Logan High. When we decided to get married, she was a student at Utah State, and I didn't even know where Logan was. And so I came to Utah State, earned my degree in statistics and computer science. That was in the mid-90s. We subsequently moved to Boston. I completed a doctorate in biostatistics at Harvard. And when I was finishing, I had a couple of faculty members at Utah State who knew me, who recruited me back. And so I joined the math department in 1999. and became a faculty member. And we lived in Smithfield for a time. I have 4 kids, and my first few went through the Smithfield elementary schools, so Sunrise and Summit. And I served on the community council back in the, I guess, the early 2000s when my daughter was a student at Sunrise. And that's how I actually got involved in the first building task force that I served on, which was in 2004, I think is when that bond was passed. And that was a great experience. I really enjoyed that. And that led to my serving on the next building task force when the next bond was passed, I think in 2013. And that was also a really rewarding experience, a lot more challenging, I think, than the first because of the high school issue, but it was really, really educational, really useful. We had a great bunch of people on that task force that I worked with. So I think that's how I kind of became acquainted with the people in the district, but since then, I moved into some administrative work at Utah State. I served as Director of Graduate Studies in my department for a little bit, and then as Associate Department Head, and now for the last 3 years I've served as Department Head. Just to give you kind of, I guess, some sense for my responsibilities in the math department, we're a fairly large department by Utah State standards. I have between 45 and 50 faculty that I oversee. The budget for our department is somewhere around $7 million. We have about 60 graduate students, about 350 undergraduates who are getting mathematics degrees. And so I oversee, first and foremost, just all personnel issues, hiring, searches, promotion and tenure issues as people advance professionally, annual performance evaluations for all of our faculty, and then everything having to do with the operations of the department. Our department is pretty complex because mathematics is such a central part of general education at any university that we have a big teaching portfolio in my department. I think our one department, there are 40 plus departments on campus, and our department covers probably something like 8% of all the student credit hours on campus, just our one department. In fact, I think the number of credit hours we teach dwarfs 3 other colleges on campus. But it certainly dwarfs any other department. So we have, some broad responsibility that I think, those who work, the great people who work for the Cache County School District, I'm sure can understand or sympathize with. We have our general education responsibility. We have our majors, and we have, those who are doing graduate study, and we're also conducting research. So our oversight is varied. We need to be able to help students who maybe are less prepared when they get to college to be successful, all the way up through the other end of the scale, students who are very prepared, who are majoring either in earning an undergraduate or a graduate degree. So I think I think that's all I can really tell you kind of in terms of
You might have
background.
answered about half of the questions already.
Great.
We're
Nothing
gonna
better
ask
than
them
having
anyway.
somebody monologue for a minute, and then you can just hit the gavel and move on.
We'll ask all the questions, and you may just want to add a detail or two
Sure.
if you've already answered it. So we're going to start off with Terry, and we'll just move this way with the questions and
All right.
just speak into the microphone.
So you've already described your education and work experience to us. Do you think there are specific personality traits or skills that you have that would help you to serve on this board?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Terry, you've had some exposure in my department, so you know that I say this in the most loving way, but there's one definition of a mathematician. It's a blind man
Careful.
in a dark room looking for a black cat that's not there. So now imagine trying to manage 45 of those people. No, I love my department. I love my work, but I think that one thing that my experiences on the building task force taught me is that people have when it comes to education, whether it's public education, primary, secondary, or university education, people who are invested in education have strong feelings about the best approaches or, practices or, their own theories about how things should work. And so, in mathematics is especially fraught because a lot of students, both, all the way through primary, secondary, and university education have a phobia of math. And so there are a lot of interests to balance, in my position as department head, and I feel like I'm able to understand, sometimes informed, maybe sometimes not so informed, but often very emotional, these debates that go on about these approaches, and I'm able to, keep a balanced view and try to move toward consensus based on evidence, and based on putting students' interest, in my case, first and foremost over, over the interests of people who maybe are not so interested in the student viewpoint, if that kind of makes sense. So I think that trying to build consensus in my department is a challenge, and I think it's something that we've largely been able to do.
Great, thanks.
All right, Chris. Please describe your relationship, describe your understanding of the role and responsibility of a school board member or a member of a public school board, and have you had any experience in serving in a position similar to this one?
Well, a lot of my understanding about what happens with the school board has actually come from my experience serving on these two building task forces, and my experience in that capacity kind of demonstrated to me that that you in some sense serve as a resource to the school district. I mean, of course, there are really, really capable people who work for the school district who are professionals, and Dr. Norton, is at the helm, and I got to know a lot of the people that kind of work in the district, and I think that I don't know if this is too broad, but my perspective is that the school board's job is to make sure that the district is functioning in a way that shows that that we have some responsibility to the public, and so to connect the professional administration of the district, which I'm not saying this just to pander. My observation of how the district functioned at the time that I was on the building task force is that it was outstanding. They were aware of what was being spent, and they were fiscally responsible, and were very sensitive to public input, especially in terms of fiscal issues. And I think that the school board facilitates that, that it helps to have an interface between the public and the district administration. I think is crucial, when you have a public entity that's funded using taxpayer dollars, and that is that is funded by the state. I think that's really crucial. So I would say at a very high level, that's what I would say the school board's responsibility is to me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. How do you view the school board members' relationship with the district and with school staffs?
Well, my last close exposure to that was, during that 2013 bond election, and my observation was that they were enmeshed really closely. In fact, my first experience with the building task force, at times it took me, a few meetings to understand who was actually there representing the board, and who was actually serving in the district, and to understand their division of responsibility, because they just, they seem to work together really well, and they seem to integrate together really well. so that's been my experience. I don't feel at the time during either of those experiences, which were 8 or 9 years apart, and involved slightly different school boards between the two experiences. In both cases, I felt like the relationship between the school board and the district was fairly close, that they seemed to relate to each other well. They were respectful and constructive.
Okay, thank you.
Describe your vision for the Cache County School District.
That's kind of a tough question, because I'm not the kind of person that would want to come into an organization and impose my own vision or will on people who have more extensive experience than me. My vision, I know that I don't want this to sound like I'm copying out, but my vision would be to participate and listen, and to learn from my colleagues, and to make sure that frankly that student interests were placed first. I've had 3 daughters who graduated from Skyview. We ended up moving to Hyde Park in 2007. So my 3 daughters graduated from Skyview. I have a son who's now at Green Canyon, who's a freshman who plays football there. And so I've gotten to know a lot of teachers all the way up through the primary and secondary ranks, and I have enormous respect for the teachers in this district, and for the administrators. Dave Swenson has been just phenomenal with my kids, and so in the Cache County School District is a high achieving district, and even during the last, I can't remember which building task force it was, but I actually went and I found data to demonstrate just what the Cache County School District was doing with their dollars, and not any surprise to you guys, but they seem to be doing more with less. I mean, I know that the state allocates funds to make sure that districts are equitably funded, but there are still some districts that are better funded than others through other mechanisms. And Cache County, not only is Utah one of the lowest funded per student states in the nation, but Cache County was even at the time at the bottom of the heap in Utah, and yet students are on average they're well disciplined, they behave on average better than they do in a lot of other districts, and they perform better. And so my vision would be to make sure that level of performance is maintained, because obviously I think we're doing something right. And so I wouldn't want to come in and start throwing grenades around and wreaking havoc by imposing my own kind of dissonant view on anybody else. I think there's a lot that's going right, and I would like to participate in making sure that continues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now you've touched on a lot of this, but what has been your experience with the Cache County School District, and what do you see as its strengths? What do you see as strengths and weaknesses of the district?
Well, I guess I've kind of addressed this, but to reiterate 1 or 2 points, putting aside the student achievement, which is high, and I think a lot of that has to do with it has to do with the outstanding teachers. It has to do with parental involvement, which is a big predictor of student success anywhere that you live. But I just want to reiterate again how impressed I was in my past work on the building task force with the district administrators in the office. Starting with people like Dale. I learned a lot by just observing them, and by I can't remember even the gentleman that used to oversee busing in the district. Can you remind me his name?
Wayne Reese.
Yeah. I just could not believe, and Bruce Parker, I could not believe what they managed to squeeze out of the limited dollars that they had. It was like magic. And and yet they were not, they weren't, they didn't have Chicken Little attitudes, they never complained about, they just were trying to do the best job they could with what they had, and they did a great job. They got, they managed to leverage the resources that they had in ways that were really commendable, and they did it in a calm, reasonable way without, a lot of, I guess, a lot of hand-wringing or anything like that. And so I'd say, aside from some of the things I've said about just how impressive the student achievement is and how high-performing the district is, I'd say that was one thing that impressed me a lot. And I would just add one quick one, just the culture of some of the schools that my kids have been involved in. I think people in our circle of extended family and friends who would come from elsewhere in the state to observe, say, sporting events when my kids were cheerleading or playing sports or something like that, they were always stunned at how, like, for example, at Skyview, the students who, would sing the school song at the end of a game, win or lose, how respectful they were, generally speaking, to other teams. Just the culture of respect and almost kind of like a sense of common purpose and family. I think a lot of that has to do with Dave Swenson, but you can't take things like that for granted, but I guess I'd add that as well.
Thank you.
The Cache County School District operates with a total annual budget of over $150 million. What experience or ideas do you have in working with this type of budget?
Yeah, like I said, in my department, our budget is not that big. It would be fantastic if it was. But, our department's budget is pretty sizable relative to other departments on campus. Like I said, it's about $6 or $7 million. And so that's a budget I manage, that I direct. Aside from just pointing that out, that I manage that budget with the personnel that we have, I'll just say that one priority that I've had over my past few years as department head is to make sure that people feel like we're using the budget in a way that is responsible and in a way that invests back in the faculty and students that we have in our department. So, when I first became department head, I set up, prior to my becoming department head, there was a department head and an associate department head, and all the financial decisions were made at the department head level. What I did was I organized an executive committee when I came into my position. So because our department is kind of large and complex, I added a couple of assistant department heads in addition to the associate department head that I had. And I gave them budgets. So that's not something that we had done before prior to that. In other words, the assistant department head who is over undergraduate studies, he has a budget that he manages that he can invest in activities in the department that benefit the undergraduate programs. For graduate studies, similarly, I gave him a budget. For the assistant department head for research, same thing. Before I came into my job, the way that you would get travel money to conferences, for example, was just to appear in the department head's office and ask for it, and the door would shut behind that person, and the person would come out and have the money that she or he requested. And so what I wanted to do was make this transparent, and I wanted to make these decisions in a collective way so that other people also had responsibility for these decisions and made them with their committees. So I guess what I'd say is it's important to me that fiscal decisions when you're working with millions of dollars of public funds are transparent, and that you empower people with the appropriate responsibility to manage those funds in a supervised way so that people feel like there's not, there isn't just one person or one entity making those choices, but they feel like, you feel like people are bought in other words. And so there are fewer questions that arise, or concerns about the way those funds are being used.
Thank you.
One last question.
All right.
So the local school board represents the public voice in public education. And we provide citizen governance for what public schools need and what the community wants, which is something you already know. But as such, we regularly have to try to explain our needs and wants to local legislators or state legislators. So what experience do you have working with or talking to state or local legislators? And what ideas do you have to make that process, I'll say, great?
Yeah, well, you won't be surprised by this, but President Cockett at Utah State discourages us from going and contacting our legislators on our own. So that these requests, I'm sure you can understand why, because you're in the same position. If you have 20 different people making requests of a legislator and it creates a lot of dissonance, then you're going to accomplish very little. So I have not spent any time in my position lobbying state legislators myself. However, we do have a pretty extensive budget process at Utah State that leads through filters up through the top, and of course they have a lot of expertise and a lot of experience in working with legislators. So, you know, in my position as a department head, I work with my dean, who's the dean of the College of Science, and she's great, and we work out priorities that she you know, I counsel with her, and we shape these priorities, and she uses these priorities to meet with the president herself so that they can shape the legislative agenda every year when they make their ask. Just to give you one concrete example of how this works, I'm a statistician, and I'm really interested in programs that allow students to train in data science, because that's a really hot area right now in terms of employment needs. And so we've created a program, you know, with in concert with the Huntsman School of Business, to train students in this area. We have a program now that's administered by 3 departments. Well, you know, we need resources for that, and you know, faculty positions or resources for, you know, student opportunities to do projects with companies, for example. I've branded this, and you know, our dean thinks it's a great idea, and so that's an idea that's moved up through the chain. You know, she feels like it's one of her biggest priorities because she feels like it's a great idea. And the reason why I think that this idea is a good one is because the state, especially the Utah system of higher education, is very interested in workforce-oriented initiatives. And so I've worked enough on the research side and also in my department head position to know that you have to listen to what the state wants. And there are ways of getting those signals that maybe it's not necessary just to talk to legislators. There are other bodies, the State Board of Education, you know, Utah System of Higher Education. They make their priorities known. And I think it's my job, and I feel like it would be the school board's job to be aware of those initiatives and to, you know, even though you're not individually obviously calling your legislators all the time, but as you come up with a plan, a unified plan that you can take to legislators to make sure you're aware of those priorities and to use those in ways that would benefit the district, and students in the district.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of the questions.
All right.
From us, do you have any questions for us?
I didn't even think about that. I guess one obvious question I would ask is what, as a school board, what currently keeps you up at night? You know, what do you feel like your biggest 1 or 2 challenges are right now in the district?
Well, I'll answer that from my point of view. I mentioned this with the last candidate because he asked too. It used to be that succeeding academically was the big concern for students. Now it's their mental, emotional issues that are coming along. So that's the thing that I actually worry about the most. and do feel like our district is doing a lot to try and accommodate and help students who are struggling in that area throughout their school career. Anybody
Thanks.
else?
I look about where are we going to put all these kids? I see all the construction north to south, and that's a concern.
Yeah.
And then also would be our teacher retention and keeping the good teachers that we have, administrators. That's a challenge also because there's a lot of competition out there, so.
Right, I guess which district is it that just threw down the gauntlet in the state? They're
I think, was it
paying-
Jordan?
Yeah,
Which one?
Canyons.
Oh, Canyons,
that
yeah.
significantly just raised pay.
Yeah.
Is, you don't want to create an arms race within the same state.
That's right.
Well, thankfully, we have the better place to live.
Right.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to know?
I guess that would be one question in terms of, oh, I'm sorry, Roger, you're the one that pointed this out. Where are we going to put the kids? Is that something that you are concerned about now? Is the next building phase?
Yeah, we're adding 10 classrooms to Ridgeline
Wow.
this summer. So, and how many apartments are there out in Hiram?
I don't know, the Canyon Elementary's chock full, there's a bunch, and
There's quite a few areas.
River
that-
Heights is really growing too, that area.
There's a lot of growth right now.
And we just found out that there are, I don't, what would you call that? Competition issues in the two middle schools that have kids going to separate high schools. So at Spring Creek and North Cache, there are kids who are like, oh, you're going to that school, oh, you're going to that school, in class, at this time of year especially. And the teachers are really concerned about it because it's become really heated in some.
Yeah, I'll say
And-
that just observing what's happened in my own home, the Green Canyon Skyview rivalry has kind of bared its teeth just between my son and my older daughters.
Oh, so
It's
not just
amazing
in
how
classrooms,
you
in
just you
families.
build a new school and suddenly it's like
New
Hatfields and
allegiance.
McCoys.
He's a great student, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Well, that concludes our interview. We thank you very much. We will make our decision tonight, and I will get back with you one way or the other, either tonight or tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah?
Thanks for your
Yeah,
time.
thank
Thanks
you.
for letting me come.
If you didn't get a cookie, be sure and grab one out there. They're huge. They'll feed your family.
We're having my daughter graduated from USU today.
Oh.
So we're having a party at my house.
Is that Katie?
No, Hannah.
Oh, my goodness.
well, thanks for coming on graduation night.
Yes, congratulations. Okay, everybody total up your points. And then you can grab your cookie while we're adding these up.
We're gonna go out, Kat?
Yes, would you just, why don't you pass Chris's down first? And we'll gather those in a pile and then send Clint's. Okay, there's Chris's. And I'll hang on to Clint's. Do you have a calculator to?
Yeah.
Okay, on your phone?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, overturn.
I can't do the math.
Good luck.
They've got a meeting that starts in here at 7.
Okay,
So,
Should we go to,
well, you probably gotta,
I gotta do it here.
it's recorded, yeah,
okay, go ahead.
so.
So, you punch one.
I've got the rest of them. All right, so we should have, 6.
I didn't, but I watched the time out and I went, is it supposed to do that?
Not yet. She gotta stay in that classroom until the end of the year.
Sorry, I should have reached over and went. But I was trying not to look too stressed.
Debbie
with my
probably stopped to
professors.
visit with her to.
She said she was going to. Can you pause it so that it's not recording this?
No, it's still recording.
It has to stay on?
Unless the meeting. Wait for you to say amen.
Oh, Kathy has to say that.
Yeah. I can't get this up.
Now you know how
I didn't get the memo on the blue shirt today, did I?
Must have been sleeping.
Should we all go get cookies and we could crunch it to the microphone or something?
Go grab one.
Our last candidate, he had a blue shirt on too.
Did he?
Yeah.
No, I think I knew it, so there's no point in me taking it. Corcoran. Corcoran. Dr. Steve. Nobody on campus can say it. That's a Stevie.
So do we just announce it now, or what do we do?
You can say who you're going to present to the next board meeting if you'd like to phrase it that way.
Okay.
Because you'll still need to take the motion as a board.
Yeah.
Oh.
To decide who.
So we can't decide.
We can't do it tonight.
Well, can we tell the person,
I think,
because I told them I'd let them know, but I can always call and say, we can't let you know until.
we can tell them.
I think you can indicate that the consensus is that we'd like to have you serve, but it'll be a formal action will be taken at the next board meeting.
Okay. All right, it is, Chris.
Okay?
Okay. And it was substantial, 31 points above.
Yeah, they're too good.
But yeah, both of them are great. Both of them are great. So, okay, is there any other business we need to conduct?
Adjourn.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks.